All right, good evening, everyone, and welcome to today's presentation. This is the fourth presentation in the Blackout Hate Project webinar series titled Behind the Screens, Protecting Your Child from Online Hate and Building Resilience. While today's presentation is built for parents, it is likewise helpful for aunts, uncles, and even older siblings who care for children and youth. This webinar is technically part one in a two-part series geared towards online hate. In 2 weeks, I'll be doing part two, which will be geared towards the youth. The main objective today is to help you all understand how the youth in our communities experience anti-Black hate through social media, video gaming platforms, and how to address it effectively. My name is Natasha Daly, and I will be today's presenter. I am a lawyer and registered social worker, and I currently work on the Blackout Hate Project alongside Dawn Parchment and AJ Leckie, who are also with us today. The Blackout Hate Project is an initiative created and hosted by the Black Legal Action Centre, funded by the Department of Canadian Heritage in the Government of Canada. While this presentation is made possible through the support of these organizations, the views and opinions expressed within this presentation are solely those of the presenters and do not necessarily reflect the official policies, positions, or endorsements of the Government of Canada or Canadian Heritage. As a disclaimer, neither Canadian Heritage nor the Government of Canada assumes any responsibility for the content of today's presentation. And as a personal disclaimer, to cover myself, today's presentation is a general discussion on some limited legal and social concepts, but it is not intended to be taken as legal advice. It also doesn't create a lawyer-client relationship between myself and you all as the participants. Please also be advised that today's presentation is being recorded and may be published online. I'd also like to acknowledge that we are on the ancestral traditional territories of the Ojibwe, the Anishinaabe, and in particular, the Mississauga of the Credit. This territory is part of the Dish with One Spoon Treaty. It is also covered by the Upper Canada Treaties. Today, Takaronto, the traditional Mohawk name of this area now called Toronto, and its surrounding areas are still home to many Indigenous people. I am grateful to have the opportunity to live and work on this land. I also acknowledge the many people of African descent who are not settlers, but whose ancestors were forcibly displaced as part of the transatlantic slave trade, brought here against their will, and made to work on these lands. Indigenous sovereignty is deeply and inextricably linked to Black liberation, and I will continue to mobilize and take action in solidarity with Indigenous people and communities. For today's presentation, the audience will remain muted throughout, but the chat function, as you already know, remains open throughout the entire presentation. And if there's anything that I say that catches you by surprise, feel free to comment it in the chat. Or if you have any questions, the chat function will be open throughout. Also, if you experience any technical issues, please send a private message in the chat to the person that is named tech support. And if you have any questions, please send it to the host named Black Legal Action Center, and they will do their best to support you. One last housekeeping matter is that we at the Black Legal Action Center like to use Mentimeter. This allows our presentation to be a bit more interactive where possible so that it's not just a talking head speaking the entire time. So I welcome your participation. There will also be a couple times during the presentation where I'll ask you to participate through Mentimeter, and you'll be able to enter the code when you go to menti.com that is appearing on your screen now, or you can even scan the QR code if you have your phone with you handy. You can feel free to do that now, and when I prompt you to use Mentimeter, you'll be able to be ready to do that. All right, let's get into the presentation. So as we know, the youth of today spend countless hours week after week behind a screen, whether that's a laptop at school, playing video games, or on their smartphones scrolling on social media and various chat rooms with their friends. It is no surprise then that many of them may experience or witness anti-Black hate through one of the many platforms that they use online. Hate incidences are also more likely to happen to youth online rather than in person because the perpetrators get to hide behind a screen, which sometimes does provide an added layer of anonymity. So it's important to us to get an inside look into what happens behind these screens in order to better protect and support our youth. Today's presentation has a few key objectives. First, we will help you learn how to identify anti-Black hate and distinguish it from anti-Black racism, which most people tend to be more familiar with. So you'll be able to recognize when you see anti-Black hate. Then we will take a brief look at the youth psychosocial stage of development, which helps us better understand why youth have become targets for many hate groups online. Next, we will mainly focus on how hate groups use online platforms through video games such as Roblox and social media to recruit youth and spread hateful narratives. We will also discuss how you, as an adult, can intervene and prevent youth from being recruited into hate groups or exposed to certain hate material online. Lastly, we will finish off with how you can support youth when they have experienced hate online and help build ongoing resilience for both yourself and the youth. So let's go to the first part. Let's look at anti-Black racism versus anti-Black hate. To begin with, anti-Black hate differs slightly from anti-Black racism in the sense that the difference lies in the severity and nature of the conduct. You can think of anti-Black racism as an umbrella term that can include both explicit and more subtle / covert expressions. Anti-Black hate would be considered a subset under anti-Black racism that falls into the explicit category. Anti-Black racism is defined as prejudice, attitudes, beliefs, stereotyping, and discrimination directed at people of African descent, rooted in their unique history and experience of enslavement and its legacy. It is deeply embedded in Canadian institutions, policies, and practices, and is often normalized or deemed invisible to the larger white society. Anti-Black racism is present in social, economic, educational, and political structures, leading to unequal opportunities and outcomes for Black people. While anti-Black racism shows up as discrimination through sometimes express, but more often subtle or unconscious biases, anti-Black hate in particular refers to extreme forms of expression or motivation that meet a higher legal threshold of detestation or vilification. Now let's look at hate incidents versus hate crimes. A hate incident is a non-criminal action or behavior that is motivated by hate against an identifiable group. Examples of hate incidents include using racial slurs or insulting a person because of their ethnic or religious dress or how they identify themselves. For example, a dispute in a parking lot, which escalates to verbal abuse, derogatory, or racial slurs. These incidents are very harmful and lead to emotional and psychological stress. On the other hand, a hate crime is a criminal offense committed against a person or property motivated in whole or in part by hate, bias, or prejudice against an identifiable group. An identifiable group may be distinguished by their race, nationality, or ethnic origin, color, religion, sex, age, mental or physical disability, sexual orientation, or gender expression or identity. So this means that acts of violence, even the uttering of threats, for example, involved in many anti-Black hate incidences, can rise to the level of a hate crime. Now, hate groups are radical groups of people that come together to encourage and engage in hostility or violence against people based on particular characteristics that they hate, such as the ethnicity, race, nationality, religion, gender, or sexuality. For example, there are various groups that form based on their shared hatred of Black people, often called white supremacy groups. And they can have a wide variety of different names, some of which we'll talk about today. In terms of being able to quickly identify or more readily identify a hate crime, there's a few key indicators that you can look for. One, paying attention to the comments that are made during the particular offense or incident. Two, you can think about and pay attention to what might be the motivation of the perpetrator or even if it appears that they have a lack of a motive other than the hatred that they have against blackness or other intersecting identifiable groups that the youth might be a part of or that you yourself are a part of. You might also look at the youth's perception that they were targeted. So perhaps there's no other identifiers, but the youth himself or herself believes that they were targeted because of their blackness. That is something that you should also take into account. 4, you can look for the display of hate symbols, gestures, and language, such as, a common anti-black hate symbol is a noose, which was something that was used during slavery. And 5, you want to pay attention to any recurring patterns of harassment, humiliation, or intimidation that either you witness or that the youth themselves report to you. Again, keep in mind that almost any type of criminal offense can be motivated by hate. So the key fact to consider is, did the incident or offense intentionally target individuals or property based on the offender's hate toward the identifiable group? And if the answer is yes, it would fall into that hate crime category. Now let's quickly go over to Mentimeter. On the screen here, there are 2 situations that are briefly listed. And using Mentimeter, I'd like you guys to let me know, we'll do them one at a time, whether or not this particular incident would rise to the level of being anti-Black hate, or maybe this is just an example of anti-Black racism. Let's go with number 1. Your child tells you that one of their classmates called them an ugly black monkey. Is this anti-Black hate, or might this be anti-Black racism? And even if this happened online, another question would be, perhaps, is this an example of cyberbullying and anti-Black cyberbullying? Does it rise to that level of hate that we really discussed earlier? Again, it's your child telling you that one of their classmates called them an ugly black monkey. Would this be considered anti-Black hate? Okay, so I saw there that most people said yes. However, this is something, in my view, that would fall more in that line of being anti-Black racism. So it's using the racial slurs and it's not good. So it's a hate incident. But whether it rises to that level of being a hate crime, or more specifically anti-Black hate that really rises to that level of hate and detestation, this kind of more so falls on the side of being anti-Black racism as opposed to anti-Black hate in particular. Let's look at the next one. Someone keeps sending your son a photo of a noose with the phrase, "You don't belong at our school." Is this anti-Black hate? Yes or no? Perfect. And all of you got that right, and very quickly. This is definitely something that would more so rise to that level of being anti-Black hate. And to be clear, this is not to diminish the use of racial slurs or, for example, a situation happening like in the first one. That is something that is definitely still wrong and that your youth should feel comfortable coming to you and talking to you about. And it's also something that you should report. However, when we're really wanting to zone in on differentiating the difference between anti-Black hate, which we're seeing a rise in these days, we're really looking at things like this that really engage a lot of that, certainly more on the side of violence and almost using more radical beliefs. Particularly the sending of the picture of the noose is definitely in that area of rising to that level of hate and radicalism, which we'll talk a little bit more about as the presentation continues. Thank you so much for your participation. Before we get into the details of what anti-Black hate looks like online for these youth, it's important to consider the psychosocial development stage that your youth is at given their age. In the 1950s, a man by the name of Erik Erikson developed a theory called the psychosocial stages of development. This theory involves the idea that people advance through 8 stages of development from infancy to late adulthood, and each stage involves an interplay between social and psychological factors that shape that person's identity and personality. You'll see in the image to the right that each stage is marked by 2 opposing things. According to the theory, there is a conflict between these 2 things at each stage. If people successfully deal with that conflict, they advance through that stage with psychological strengths that help them develop a strong sense of self. Understanding the stage your youth is at is important in this context because anti-Black hate cuts to the very root of a person's identity when they experience or witness it. Grasping this knowledge can also help you better understand why youth have become the target of online hate groups and how it impacts them. This knowledge can also help you intervene more effectively and help you find healthy, creative ways to help support the youth through these harmful experiences. The stage that applies to adolescents, which are those aged 12 to 13 years old, is called identity versus role confusion. At this stage, the two things that are at conflict are identity and role confusion. It plays an essential role in developing a sense of personal identity, which will continue to influence behavior and development for the rest of that youth's life. Children and youth explore their independence and develop a sense of self more at this stage. Our sense of personal identity is shaped by our experiences and interactions with others, and it is this identity that helps to guide our actions, beliefs, and behaviors as we mature. At this stage, it's crucial to acknowledge that youth look to their social relationships and social interactions with others to help define their identity and their place in society, making social relationships like family and friends very important at this stage. Youth are often seeking a sense of belonging, which makes them easy targets for hate groups that may lure them in through that sense of belonging. It also makes experiencing hate in online group settings particularly harmful because that hate has now infiltrated spaces that they are trying to find that safety and belonging in. This can lead to some youth being influenced into believing or perpetuating these hateful narratives in an attempt to still fit in, or simply withdrawing from these spaces altogether, which also may impact that sense of belonging that they are looking for. So the key to keep in mind here is that while hate is seeping into online spaces, as we'll soon discuss, it's still important not to stop your youth completely from using these spaces altogether. But instead, it's important to encourage their independence and involvement in healthy social relationships. Through identifying when anti-Black hate might have seeped into the space, you can help the youth learn how to cope with it, report it, and overcome it. It is likewise important to learn how to prevent it where possible and to share that information with the youth. So let's get into it. There are a few online platforms that are key for you to be looking out for that your youth might be involved with. This BBC News article from a few years ago discusses the fact that researchers have found anti-Semitism, racism, and homophobia on platforms such as DLive and Odyssey, where users stream and chat about video games such as Call of Duty and Minecraft. Do any of these sound familiar? DLive is a decentralized live streaming platform known for its creator-centric model that rewards users and streamers with cryptocurrency. It aims to offer a more open alternative to the traditional YouTube, for example, but has also gained prominence and attracted extremist groups because of its low supervision and moderation by the company. The article explains that users include extremist narratives among everyday conversations on these platforms, and that can be a pathway to radicalization. Conversations may begin through the video game, and then users on the other end suggest that they move to other platforms like private Telegram channels to discuss it more. Telegram is a popular, free, cloud-based messaging app known for its large group channel capabilities, allowing users to send messages, photos, videos, and files across devices with optional end-to-end encryption for secret chats. You can think of it more like a robust version of WhatsApp. Other platforms to watch out for include different social media accounts like TikTok, Instagram, and Snapchat. Researchers found extremist role-play scenarios within certain games on various platforms that let players create and share their own custom maps and environments. Now, this may seem harmless, but some of these included Nazi concentration camps in games such as Roblox and Minecraft. Again, building in and seeping in hate in a space that is supposed to be creative and safe. One Roblox driving game actually also invited players to become a racist and simulate the murder of people belonging to ethnic minority groups by running them over in a car. While many of these online platforms say they work to ensure their platform remains a safe and civil space, and that they monitor for safety 24/7 to detect and swiftly act on any inappropriate content or behavior, that is simply not happening well enough. There's often a lot of low monitoring for safety and proper content on a lot of these platforms. One such platform that we've seen hate groups using a lot is Roblox. Roblox is a massive online platform and game creation system with over 380 million monthly active users worldwide. Users on Roblox can create their own games, referred to as experiences, play with others' creations, personalize their profiles and avatars, join groups, obtain new items for their avatars in a virtual marketplace using money called Robux, and communicate with others via social networking features. Its open nature means that the type of content varies as widely as people across the entire globe vary. However, it is known as a youth-focused gaming platform, so parental guidance is very, very important. A large portion of the Roblox user base are actually minors. Believe it or not, 56% of their users are under the age of 16 years old, and just over 20% of users are under the age of 9 years old, while only 19% of users are older than the age of 25. Video gaming has become a popular online platform for those looking to spread hate because online gaming basically forms a means for people to connect over a shared hobby online. Sadly, this includes people who hold extremist, racist, and hateful views. It's a way for them to connect with like-minded individuals, to socialize, to recruit, and ultimately to form firmer social bonds, which can be really important in terms of advancing and furthering extremist movements globally. So, what is radicalization in the first place? Radicalization refers to the process where individuals or groups adopt increasingly extreme political, social, or religious views, moving away from mainstream beliefs towards ideologies that can justify violence, hate, or terrorism to achieve some sort of radical change. This can happen gradually, often influenced by online content or extremist recruiters offering a sense of purpose or identity. Underneath its kid-friendly facade, as we saw in the picture before, it looks like cartoons, it looks like a kid's TV show. But Roblox actually has many issues, such as content moderation, who's actually monitoring the kind of content users are being exposed to on the platform, player safety, and exposure to inappropriate content. An article from April 2025, which we can also actually put in the chat. So you can look at it now or also save it for later and read along. This article was published less than a year ago, and it discussed the fact that an organization uncovered a disturbing subculture on Roblox that centers around mass violence. For example, ASS, which stands for Active Shooter Studios, creates Roblox maps that replicate real-life mass shootings conducted by white supremacists and other extremists. However, by creating these kinds of experiences on Roblox, they are fostering an online environment where race-based violence is not only normalized, but celebrated, as seen in how the group's experiences are perceived by their fans and by other players. Because these kinds of games recreate extremist-related mass shootings, such as the 2022 Buffalo shooting, where the perpetrator deliberately targeted and killed Black people, they may also serve as a gateway to extremist content. Players might be prompted to seek out more information about these violent events, which can lead them to manifestos or videos created by the attackers. And if you look right there at the bottom right of your screen, or on the right hand side of your screen, you'll see that that's kind of like a screen capture of what the youth might look at from their points of view while they're playing this video game. And you'll see in the fine print on the gun, it says Buffalo 2022. That's not something that the youth puts there, but that's something that the creator of that experience or that game puts there. And again, to recreate the extremist narrative. While there is a lot of information out there to be explored, for the purposes of this webinar, we will highlight and provide you with a few articles you can check out to learn more. Here are some of the things you'll want to look out for as you listen to, watch, or monitor your youth's or your child's usage of this platform called Roblox. You'll want to consider looking at different usernames. Usernames on the platform that might be concerning often will have connections to right-wing extremist figures or attackers, similar sounding but misspelled in order to hide from being detected by the company's monitoring system. So for example, a username might read Adolf Hitler instead of Adolf Hitler, who we know was a part of the Holocaust, or the leader, I should say, of the Holocaust movement. User-generated t-shirts are also something that you should look into. The t-shirts themselves that their avatars might be wearing may include racist slogans, flags, or symbols. You also want to look at the groups that your youth might be a part of. For example, they might be titled white, and I put XYZ, but essentially white something. And that often indicates that it might be a group that is promoting anti-Black hate and white supremacy, such as white laces. These groups often contain little in-group communication, so if you were to actually click on the group, there might not be a lot of movement in the chat, but they may be used to indicate what beliefs that user is affiliated with, and perhaps they then use Roblox to open the door to join their private chat rooms off the platform where they continue to communicate about these hateful narratives. And the last but also probably one of the most important is you also want to look at the different experiences that your child is playing if they're playing Roblox. Titles such as Racism Tycoon and others that may hint toward games filled with hateful narratives that are also playable. And again, if these games are being played by the youth over and over and over, it is definitely doing something to their minds and to their bodies, which we'll talk about soon. I also want to highlight here that oftentimes when youth play these video games, they're often using earphones or some sort of headset, so you might not hear exactly what's going on. And this is really where we want to encourage parents to be more actively involved in your youth's online life. Perhaps that means you're actually, maybe popping in and seeing what's actually on the screen or inviting a conversation with the youth as well. Now that we've learned more about what happens behind the screens on video gaming platforms, and Roblox in particular, let's talk about what you can and should do to intervene in this area. There is a helpful article titled, What Parents Need to Know About Roblox, that you can access online, and we should also be able to put that link in the chat. It's quite a detailed article, and I'll go through some of the high-level aspects of it briefly, but definitely take a look at the article in its entirety. In brief, the main way you can intervene and prevent your child from being exposed to anti-Black hate and hateful material on Roblox is to monitor and control what types of experiences your child can access. To do this, you will want to look out for certain keywords that warn of potentially inappropriate and hateful content and then restrict it. Roblox has content maturity labels and content labels. The content maturity labels indicate the level of maturity suitable for that particular experience or game. And then the content labels indicate what type of content is within any particular experience, such as realistic depictions of blood or paid item trading. And these content labels are assigned by the user who created that particular experience. There's 4 main labels, all by the same name, whether it's content maturity or content label itself. If it's labeled minimal, that often means that it may contain occasional mild violence, light unrealistic blood, and or occasional mild fear. If it says moderate, that's definitely on the more serious end, where it may contain moderate violence, light realistic blood, moderate crude humor, unplayable gambling content, and or moderate fear. And if it's labeled as restricted, it may contain strong violence, heavy realistic blood, moderate crude humor, sometimes also certain romantic themes, unplayable gambling content, the presence of alcohol, strong language, and or moderate fear. And these restricted experiences are only available to users who are the age of 17 years of age or older. And that age is verified by completing an ID verification system, which is part of the Roblox platform itself. Effective intervention requires consistent dialogue and communication with your youth. While Roblox and many other online platforms allow for parents to manage and control the user content, given the youth's psychosocial stage of development we discussed earlier, it is important that youth are actively engaged in the dialogue and process, and this can actually help preserve that sense of independence as well. There are several steps you can take as a parent to maintain peace of mind while helping to make sure your youth or child is having fun on Roblox while being protected from hate. Roblox automatically sets certain defaults depending on the user's stated age at the time of registration. So, one of the first things you should do as a parent is check to make sure that your child's birth date on the account is accurate. These defaults fall into two buckets, one for kids under the age of 13 years old and one for youth older than 13. In either category, the user also has the power to block and report annoying, disruptive, inappropriate, or hateful players that they may encounter when playing online. Make sure that they and you know how to do so. Again, all of those details are found at the link provided in the chat. This is a perfect opportunity to remind your child or youth that they can come to you if they encounter another individual that is rude or making them feel uncomfortable online no matter what. Note that for users between the ages of 13 and 17, Roblox doesn't have traditional parental controls. Instead, it offers something it calls transparency tools so that parents can see what their teens are doing on Roblox without having direct control. You must be invited by your teen to take advantage of these options with your own linked Roblox account. After linking your accounts and activating the appropriate settings, you'll be able to see your child's connections and trusted connections, see how much time they spend playing and in which experiences or games, receive notifications whenever the youth makes a purchase, and these features are limited, unfortunately. So again, it is still crucial for parents and adults in general to be actively watchful over the youth's gaming life online. It's also important to keep the lines of communication open and remind the youth of important precautions like not sharing their real name or address online. And remind them that if anyone asks for that kind of information, to immediately block and report them. Now let's also take a look at what anti-Black hate through social media might look like. TikTok has also played a key role in spreading active shooter studios content, which we discussed earlier. Analysts have found numerous TikTok accounts sharing gameplay footage of mass shooting recreations made by ASS and others. The comment sections of these videos are often filled with requests for the names of and links to these different games. Instagram can also house and spread hateful content, either directly in a post or in comment sections under certain posts. Some people may also use direct messaging or the DM function on these social media apps to send hate speech and videos or photos that include violent and extremist language or symbols. So your child may also receive hateful direct messages on these platforms. So what does social media intervention and prevention look like? Here is a short video that explains how you can block sensitive content on Instagram. And with a quick Google search, you can also find videos like this online with respect to blocking certain content on TikTok and other social media platforms as well.
Occasionally display sensitive content, but you can easily limit your exposure to such content with just a few taps. Let's get started. First, let's look at Instagram's built-in features for blocking sensitive content. Go to your Instagram profile. Tap the menu icon in the top right corner. Tap Content Preferences. Tap Sensitive Content. Choose Less. Tap Confirm to save your selection. By setting this option to Less, you can better control the exposure of sensitive or potentially harmful content when browsing Instagram. But what if you want even more control over sensitive content, especially when it comes to your kids? This is where Instagram's sensitive content blocker, AirDroid Content Detector, comes in. With AirDroid Content Detector, you can use it to monitor your child's Instagram activity, including how much time they spend on Instagram each day and how many Instagram notifications they receive each day. Most importantly, you can set keywords for sensitive content on Instagram, so you will receive alerts whenever those words appear in your child's searched content, messages, or texts on the platform. It is an excellent way for concerned parents to stay informed. Setting it up is simple. Here's how you can do it. First, install the AirDroid Parental Control app on your device and the AirDroid Kids app on the target device. And follow the setup instructions to create an account, link devices, and grant necessary permissions. Then, go to Social Content Detection and tap on App Detection Management to activate Instagram monitoring. Finally, in Keyword Management, Subscription, AirDroid Parental Control System has a built-in list of various harmful keywords. At the same time, you can also choose customization to create a keyword category by yourself. You will be alerted as soon as the keywords in the category are triggered. You can always limit your child's Instagram use during study time, bedtime, etc. by going to App Limits, selecting Add Schedule, choosing apps, selecting Instagram, and setting downtime to help kids develop healthy digital habits. Plus, if your child is using an Android phone, with the screen mirroring feature, you can view everything happening on the target device in real time. You can download AirDroid Parental Control for a free trial below this video. By combining Instagram's native content filters with AirDroid Parental Control's powerful features, you can ensure a safer and more controlled Instagram experience for your family. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more tips on online safety.
And again, while that one was focused on Instagram, with a quick Google search for any specific social media platform, these other options where you can actually control the content that comes into your youth or your child's Instagram or social media platforms should also be available. So we've talked a lot about supporting youth who might experience or witness hate online. Or we're about to talk about that soon. We thought it might also be good to discuss what to do if you suspect or find out that your child or youth in your care is actively participating in or spreading anti-Black hate or other forms of hate online. Ultimately, if you're concerned that your child may be spreading hate online or is at risk of being involved in an online hate group, you should ask your child about their experiences directly. You should also openly discuss social and political ideas with children and teens to see what their perspectives are. You should advise your child of the harm caused by online hate and let them know that there are potential legal consequences to that behavior. If you feel unable to help a youth who is involved in a hate group, you should consider seeking external help from a trained mental health professional. A qualified professional may be able to help your child understand the consequences of their interest in hate groups, find better ways to meet their needs, and help your family navigate the situation in a safe and a more healthy manner. That's also a great online resource, the link of for which I will also place now in the chat for everyone. Now, for the latter half of this presentation, we're going to look at the impact that experiencing anti-Black hate actually has, even when we're experiencing it online and it's not directly in person, on our bodies as human beings and particularly for our youth. The reality is that the long history and present day exposure to anti-Black racism and anti-Black hate has a large impact on the overall health and well-being of Black people, and this is called racial trauma. Racial trauma refers to the mental and emotional injury resulting from racism, racial discrimination, stereotypes, hate crimes, and other race-related stressors experienced directly or indirectly. Direct racial trauma is when the incident happens to you, whereas indirect racial trauma stems from when you witness it happening to somebody else, especially those that you identify with. So, for example, me seeing another Black woman experiencing anti Black hate will impact me indirectly. In order to better understand and heal from the holistic impact of anti Black hate, we need to look at racial trauma from what social workers call a biopsychosocial perspective. The biopsychosocial model helps us holistically understand a person's well being and their challenges by integrating biological, psychological, and social or environmental factors. So let's look at some examples. Experiencing anti Black hate actually has an impact on us biologically in multiple ways. A large component of the biological impact starts with the amygdala, which is a structure in your brain that's responsible for processing emotions such as fear, anxiety, and recognizing danger. It also attaches emotional significance to memories and is involved in forming new memories related to your survival. The amygdala is known as the fear center of the brain. It helps you identify when you're in danger and helps your body respond appropriately to help you survive. Your brain, in an effort to protect you, recognizes patterns of threats to help you respond quicker to a potential threat, increasing your chances of surviving. Our bodies respond to anti Black hate by triggering the amygdala because it recognizes it as a threat to our lives, safety, and well being. And it's important to note that our brains react similarly to physical hate as it does to online hate. The brain doesn't necessarily make a difference between when we're physically in danger or when we think we're in danger. And when we experience online hate, it still triggers those same sorts of reactions in our bodies. Psychologically, experiencing racial trauma impacts the way we think and process information about ourselves and others. And this is again important for youth who are at that critical stage of defining and solidifying what their personal identity is going to look like. For example, if our brain perceives a threat due to experiencing or witnessing anti Black hate online, we may begin to experience intrusive thoughts, lower self confidence, or low self esteem issues. We also may experience depression. Socially, racial trauma also impacts the way that we interact with each other and society at large. Youth may experience social anxiety, even in in-person settings because of online hate, or they may experience social withdrawal, where they begin to no longer want to engage in activities or be around people that they used to like. You may notice other changes in behavior regarding their screen time or even their online presence. It's important to keep in mind that everyone responds differently to racial trauma. And so it's normal and expected to be impacted by racial trauma, and it doesn't mean that there's something wrong with you or your child. Our bodies, minds, and emotions are simply reacting to legitimate and real threats against our safety. And it's not a small thing. However, prolonged responses to racial trauma without effective coping strategies and healing can lead to poor health outcomes, and in the case of youth, poor self identity development. But there's hope for healing. The good thing is that once you're able to identify and name what's going on, you're then able to recognize it faster in your youth and develop healthy coping mechanisms to help you and your youth cope and heal. So let's talk about building resilience from racial trauma and what that actually looks like. Developing healthy coping strategies is key to building resilience against anti Black hate and racial trauma. Immediately following the incident, one's nervous system will likely respond quite quickly, causing them to experience the following symptoms, such as shock, a racing heartbeat, sweaty palms, hypervigilance, a headache, or even chest pains. But over time, these symptoms can look like depression, low self esteem, poor self image, and even persistent anger. Here's a few things you and the youth can do to help calm down the nervous system in the moment. One really effective one is breathing. It helps to have the youth, and you can even practice it now as you're listening, close your eyes to limit the amount of information that the mind and that the brain is taking in, and take slow, deep breaths, inhaling through your nose to fill your diaphragm, holding it for 3 seconds, and then releasing it through your mouth. And just doing that breathing exercise a couple of times can really help calm down your nervous system. There's also grounding exercises, such as spelling your name or a simple word backwards, or picking up an object and describing its color, texture, weight, and scent in great detail. The point of these grounding exercises is to bring awareness to the present moment and taking your mind and your brain sort of out of that emotionally charged fight, flight, or freeze mode that the amygdala triggers the nervous system to go into. Another one that we think will be particularly helpful for youth, as it can help build their self-confidence and strengthen their inner sense of self, is repeating positive affirmations. We strongly encourage creating and repeating personal positive affirmations with your youth. Some of these might look like, my life has value and it matters. I am the descendant of greatness and not the image that has been written for me throughout history. I am allowed to feel anger when I experience or witness anti-Black hate or violence. I have the ability to heal and we will overcome. You may also witness a change in behavior, which we mentioned earlier. Don't ignore it. For example, perhaps a youth who enjoyed going to school before is now expressing reservations about going to school or attending a particular class. Perhaps they used to play video games and now no longer have an interest in doing so. It's important to create a safe space for the child to feel comfortable discussing this sensitive topic with you. So we've kind of created a 4-step process that you can keep in mind. Step 1 is to get curious. Be alert and notice these changes in behavior. Once you do, get curious about them and ask the youth open-ended questions. For example, a conversation with a youth whose name is Xavier might look like, "Hi Xavier, I noticed that you no longer play video games a lot. Insert change in behavior here. And I wanted to check in with you about that. What is it about playing video games that made you, insert change in behavior here, no longer want to play video games anymore?" And that opens the floor for greater discussion. I want to encourage this particular language of what is it about XYZ, that to use that when you're having the conversation with the youth, as opposed to saying something like, why are you not playing video games anymore? Or use just starting it with the why. And it's because oftentimes that why can sometimes trigger not necessarily an attack, but can kind of make the youth feel like perhaps they're in trouble or perhaps they've done something wrong. But instead, when you say, what is it about XYZ, you're actually opening up the floor for more of an exploratory conversation as opposed to tell me what's going on. The youth might be more receptive to that. Step 2, you want to make sure that you provide reassurance of your desire to help and provide those coping strategies that we talked about earlier. You want to promote a high sense of self and belonging in the youth on a consistent basis, not only when something might be wrong. Help them create and repeat those personal positive affirmations for themselves. Maybe make it part of a morning routine or something. Step 3, if there is an issue that the youth has encountered and that they've told you about, I strongly encourage reporting the issue or the incident appropriately. Depending on where and how the incident occurred, you can report it accordingly. If it happened online, report it there. If it happened at their school, certainly there are other school board authorities or principals or teachers that you can report it to. Anti-Black hate should always be reported. And step 4, you want to create a safety plan with the youth. It's important to have some sort of plan in place for the youth, which they can use the next time they experience an incident of anti-Black hate online, or the next time they're targeted for recruitment into a hate group. Some tips would be, first, to create this plan with the youth so that you have their buy-in and it's something they feel engaged in. This might also help them remember it the next time they need to use it. Regularly check in with the youth proactively, perhaps once every couple of months or so, to see if the issue they faced before persists or if any other incidents have arose since the last time you spoke. You also want to encourage them to come to you if they experience anything, instead of only waiting for you to ask about it. Again, creating that open space of reassurance and dialogue. Additionally, you can also help promote wellness and building resilience in these four main ways. One, talk about it. A problem shared is indeed a problem half solved. Collective healing can come from sharing our experiences in a trusted community or with a trauma-informed, culturally appropriate licensed mental health care professional. It helps us feel heard and seen, which can help also with calming our nervous systems. Self-empowerment and empowerment for the youth. Empower the youth to take control of their mental and emotional health. Focus on ways that they can do that and remind them to remind themselves of how beautiful, smart, handsome, and capable they are. Reframing our thoughts and language is also something that's very important. For example, in Canada, Black people and people of color are often referred to as minorities. But in fact, people of color are the global majority in the world. So perspective matters, and encourage your youth to broaden their perspective. Encourage them to celebrate the beauty and resilience of our people and to do it often. And lastly, this is something you can build into your daily and weekly routines. Engage in healing self-care practices, which help counteract the impact of stress on the body and mind. Maybe it's listening to music, doing breathing exercises, mindfulness meditations, or even just practicing gratitude. Healing from racial trauma and promoting your wellness in the midst of it is an ongoing and lifelong journey. The impacts of racial trauma did not occur overnight, so healing from its impacts won't happen overnight either. But I hope you now have some tools to help you cope and heal. The goal is to promote our wellness individually and in community so that we can live healthier lives, thrive in society as we were created to do, and resist anti-Black hate. Going back and touching back on focusing on the youth's psychosocial stage of development, it's also important when building resilience in your youth to help anchor their self-esteem and self-identity. Experiencing anti-Black hate is not just about the trauma of the incident itself, but also the story that this youth may have told themselves about what just happened. Sometimes the stories we begin to tell ourselves happen even at an unconscious level. And being mindful of the narratives and beliefs that we've created or that our youth might have created based on our lived experiences is one way we can begin to heal from the effects of racial trauma. Exploring this a bit more together, I want to hear from you all on this one. So let's go to Mentimeter one last time before we wrap up. Let's spend a couple minutes brainstorming. What are some ways that you can help ground your youth's sense of identity and sense of self? And you can just put quick jot notes in the chat, whether something that stuck with you from this presentation that you're going to now take and do with your youth, or maybe it's something you're already practicing. But what are some ways? Positive affirmations, absolutely. It's one of my favorites. One way that I like to do that for myself and that I encourage it for others as well is actually writing your positive affirmation on a sticky note and placing it somewhere that you will see it every day. So sometimes on the wall beside the door in your bedroom when you're leaving your bedroom in the morning, or on the mirror so that when they wake up and they're brushing their teeth in the morning, they are reminded of that positive affirmation. Telling them that they're a wonderful person, absolutely. Letting them know that they come from a lineage of greatness, absolutely. Oh, I like this one. Engaging in positive Black content where Black joy is experienced. That's great. I agree with that. Absolutely. Whether that's YouTube videos that celebrate or that show Black celebration and Black liberation, or even showing Black youth on being centered on and celebrated on like different cartoons and shows. Very good. I like this one as well. Actively talk, check in, and connect with the youth. Absolutely. That's key. And ask open-ended questions when you notice that your youth behavior has changed. And positive affirmations. This is great. Being aware of finding positive material for our children that had positive messages. I agree. And that's very, very, very important. The messaging that they receive is important, and also the frequency of that messaging is important too. So definitely becoming that hands-on parent will be key to really grounding their sense of self and identity. Positive expressions of Black love, absolutely that as well. Definitely that as well. Again, in their psychosocial stage of development, they are looking, technically the next stage up is where I think they focus more on like the intimacy and their own personal like romantic relationships, but even in the later side of adolescence, they're likely also thinking about those things too, and that can also help ground their identity and remind them of their self-worth and their worthiness of that. That's so good too. Let them feel a sense of belonging by showing your support no matter what happens. Absolutely. Unconditional love, unconditional support, and encouraging them to wear or love what they want. I like that. Giving them that sense of agency so that they don't fall into the traps that might be out there with other youth or what other people in their schools are doing. I like that a lot. Wow, these are so great. As a recap, I want to highlight four main points from today's presentation. I feel like that exercise just now helped us really summarize the supporting of the youth piece. And so let's look at a few things to remember from the first half of the presentation as well. Number one, remember that anti-Black hate is different from anti-Black racism and involves extreme forms of expression or motivation that meet a higher legal threshold of detestation or vilification. Two, remember that hate crimes are prohibited by the criminal code. You should report them to the police. And again, even when you experience them online, that you report them in the ways that you can online as well. Three, as we've mentioned before, create that safe space for consistent and proactive dialogue with the youth about their online world. And lastly, empower the youth to block and report accounts online when necessary. Thank you for listening, and I'd now like to open up the floor if there are any questions.
Natasha, notice that there are some comments in the chat for you.
Oh, I do see some. Oh, great information. Thank you. So, in terms of organizations that promote hate, there certainly are a number of different groups and organizations that do. Today's presentation isn't necessarily focused on any one particular organization, so to speak, in terms of like a business or organizations or groups of people, but it's more so focused on the online aspects of what we might see or experience in the youth world, and perhaps another presentation or another platform may discuss more of those organizations, but that won't be the focus, or that wasn't the focus of today's presentation. So I'm sorry I'm not able to add more detail for that one. In terms of the PowerPoint slides, perhaps this might be a question for Adrian. I'm not sure if that's possible at this stage. I do know that the slides will be provided at some point online with the recording as well to the presentation, but I'm wondering if it might be possible.
Yeah, so thank you for your question. One focus of our initiative for the Blackout Hate Project is not only just the webinars, but creating a resource that exists online with the webinars as well as the presentation material as well. So we'll keep everyone up to date. Anyone who's been a part of the webinars, as soon as our website is live, we'll be able to have resources with all of this information. But until then, we won't be sharing, but likely look out to around end of January, early February. We should be providing the some presentation notes as well for these presentations.
Awesome, that's helpful, Adrian. Thank you. Oh, thank you so much, Hannah, for your question. So the question was, how does online hate differ from in-person discrimination, and why can it feel harder to escape? This is a great question. So I think because you're asking it from my personal opinion, I feel like oftentimes when it comes down to our online lives or experiences, it can feel harder to escape because we're always on our phones. So, for example, and this is again my own personal experience, but sometimes I go on Instagram just because, I'm done with work or I want to decompress or I want to mindlessly scroll or something. And then if I come across a video that's demonstrating anti-Black hate, or someone sends me, or I get a DM, or a youth even gets a DM or anything like that, those things popping up in a moment where we are just trying to be ourselves and just find that sense of safety or belonging, particularly when we think about youth in their online spaces, like video gaming, for example. Youth often go to video games to have fun or to decompress. And so when hate is infiltrated into these sort of remote and online spaces, it can feel harder to escape because it's kind of like I'm already at home. Like what does that mean? Does that mean I can no longer scroll on social media? Oftentimes there are things that come to us as opposed to us looking for them. Sometimes it's again coming to a device that's right in my hand and save separate and apart from putting it down and perhaps exiting out of that app or blocking that person and all of that. It's kind of just it seems more in it suffocating, so to speak. And in terms of the difference between it, I really think it's just the difference between online and in person. I think one of the main differences really is just that aspect of it. The fact that if something's happening in person, you know you can avoid that space. You know you can get away from that person. It does still impact you in the same way as we talked about during the presentation, but I think being able to have that physical distance and some sort of assurance that, okay, if I don't want to go back to this place that I experienced anti-Black hate in, I don't have to go back. But when it happens on our phones are always with us. And so it can have more of a suffocating impact. Oh, thank you so much for sharing that with us as well, Marcia.
Natasha, you also have a question in the Q&A.
Oh, thank you for this informative webinar. In your presentation, you mentioned how video games become spaces for online hate groups. Are there more detailed investigations and or resources that can be used to better inform parents? Absolutely. So right now, in terms of the resources, we've provided the links that we found in the chat, and those links are often articles that also include links within the article itself to further articles or other studies that have been done that give even more detail and go into more detail about a particular video game or just this aspect of radicalization seeping into the online space. So we encourage you to access the links that we've provided in the chat, go through those, and even looking for other resources that might be helpful for you so that you can be able to learn more information. Oh, perfect. And Adrian just put another link in the chat looking at the ADL resource. That one's certainly very helpful. And also, one of the links that we provided was with Roblox, where it's like, what parents need to know. If you do a quick Google search of what parents need to know about X, and perhaps it's in a particular video game that your youth frequently plays, and perhaps there's concerns that were raised there. I would encourage you to look for those kinds of articles and resources as well. I'm sure there's tons out there that can also advise you of what some of the parental controls might be available, similar to what we presented today with Roblox. I hope that's helpful. Alrighty, thank you all so much for your participation throughout, your attention, and for the questions. I hope you enjoyed today's presentation, and we look forward to continuing to connect with you as we eradicate anti-Black hate from our communities. Take care.
Hey, thank you very much, Natasha. Thank you so much for the insights that you provided, your intentional research that you've placed into this too, especially how active it is right now when it comes to the online world and keeping up with it. This definitely gave us a great foundation to work with and moving forward to protect our children and youth. Would you like the opportunity to talk a bit about the next session that's coming up in 2 weeks?
Absolutely. The next session that will be taking place on January 29th will be similar to today's presentation, but more so focused on the youth. So we'll still be talking about certain things they can be looking out for in terms of video games and social media and some of the harms surrounding the online hate that they may experience, but also offering them more youth-focused language and support as they navigate through experiencing anti-Black hate as well. So for those of you who have your 11-year-old or your 16-year-old and you want them to also be able to gain some of the information, but instead of the language being focused more on adults or geared more towards adults, having it be more geared towards them in a way that's palatable to them, that they can understand, that will be the focus of our presentation on the 29th, and you can encourage them to register.
Right. Thank you. And with that, thank you so much for everyone for attending. Please do, as soon as you close the link, close the chat, you will also see a survey. As Natasha mentioned, it helps us inform our next steps with our webinar series as we are starting to close our Blackout Hate initiatives from March. So please do provide your feedback and insights. And thank you so much for your time tonight. Take care, and we look forward to seeing you in our next session. Good night, everyone.